Hi, I'm Husna Haze, your author host for now Nakazzi's Indie Author Spotlight series, where we shine a light on talented authors and their amazing stories. I'm joined by Daniel Cuervonegro, a historian, illustrator, he's a teacher, and he's a bit of a jack of all trades. So I'm going to pass it on over to Daniel. Introduce yourself, let us know a bit about yourself.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel. I'm a Colombian author of science fantasy books. I'm also the writer of tabletop role-playing games that I wrote and illustrated many years back. I do all my writing and all my illustrations and editing and stuff because honestly I can't afford anything else. um, I'm uh, I'm a teacher at a private school here in Bogota, and I live with my soon-to-be wife, who's around in the house, and with my cats. And yeah, it's an honor to be here with Husna, and an honor to have been chosen for this interview. And I'm
Well,
deeply humbled by it.
we're glad you're here, and we're glad that our viewers can get to know a bit about your writing journey and your experience within this publishing industry, basically. So you mentioned a bit about the tabletop role-playing games that you first entered within, but you failed to mention that it was nominated for the 2010 Enos Awards. So tell us a bit about that for its art.
So I was very young. I was like 25 back then. It's been a while, and we illustrated the book with one of my best friends. We went to the it's called a Gen Con, a Geneva Convention, which it's basically a United States, huge gathering of people who like fantasy books, role-playing games, and there's a competition there called the Annie Awards, for which we were nominated based on the cover arts and the interior art of the book. I still have plenty of those books around. Um, they were popular for a while in some regards, but never really took off in terms of making sales. It was too expensive. It was too big. The shipping was too complex from here, and the cost in dollars was something we couldn't afford in Colombian peso. So we eventually had to stop selling the books physically. And back then, selling books digitally was not really a thing that happened. It was starting, but we just never got into it until it was too late, and the book was already more or less um, the interest had waned down, I guess. But it was a pretty fun book. It's a setting based on entirely on a dream that is being had by a universal consciousness that essentially is you play the tabletop role playing, you play inside the great dreams, so you can essentially manifest anything so long as you can convince the conscience that it may exist. So it was a fun game, I guess. It allowed for a lot of creativity from the players, a lot of yeah, a lot of improvisation. It was fun.
So did you get into that through gaming?
No, we got into gaming because honestly, back in the 90s, living in Bogota was really hard. We couldn't really go out a lot because there were terrorist attacks happening all over the city. Bombs were exploding. It was really dangerous. So and the lights would just go off, so we couldn't like play video games or watch TV or anything. So role playing games was a very good alternative to just sit down with your friends and tell stories mutually and collectively that we alone couldn't tell. So it was really fun. That's how we got into role playing. But we couldn't afford the actual games, so we had to invent our own because back then there was no TLC with the United States or Europe. So bringing something from abroad was extremely expensive. And so we just came up with the games and the gaming systems on our own, and we played, and that's how the book was eventually made into something.
That's fascinating. So can you explain a little bit about the Atlas of Dream series?
Yes, that would be my first published novel. It's gonna be. It was gonna be 7 books, but as you can see, I don't know if you have it anywhere, but it's pretty book. It's pretty book. It's pretty big. It's a huge book, and it kept getting bigger until I realized I might just be telling too many things here. I narrowed it down to 4. So now it's gonna be a saga of 4 books. More or less, the size of each book is about 350,000 words. approximately.
That's a
With
lot of work.
that's a lot of words. It
Yeah.
doesn't really say a lot to people who don't really count pages in words, but
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's pretty thick. It's a pretty thick book. It's like 750 something pages. It's a big book. So the Atlas of Dreams is essentially the entire saga that is based around humanity in its last attempt to preserve the species and life in the universe, against entropy and the end of time. But in the that's like the great overall arcing theme of this saga. The book itself is more about specific characters and how they face events in their time regarding this attempt of preservation of life throughout the universe in myriad ways. For example, the first one, Sins of the Maker, is more about how we are responsible for the crimes we do, even when they are things that we wanted to do. Like, for example, the crime of, well, the title actually comes from an event that happened to me when I was writing the book, which was that my father died, and I thought at some point, like, the greatest sin of my father was to die, because how could he? Um, and so that got me to think about all the things that we, by merit of the worthiness of our creations, what we really want to do with our creation, how that creation in itself can become a sin if it's misunderstood or if it's unredeemed. So, for example, when you love someone and you love them imperfectly, you have created something beautiful, but something that can bring a lot of pain, and that's the sin of you as the maker of that love. So there's a lot of characters that kind of delve within this dynamic of the things I wrought into the world are also the things that are bad with the world because I wanted them to be so good in the world. And so now I'm the maker of the sin, and I'm either responsible or I can just abandon it. Which leads the many of the characters to have like this very intricate relationship with their personal lives and whether they want to have them. One of the key things that the book has is this notion that the main characters always carry a blade called the suicide blade, a sword that can only kill themselves. It can harm nobody else but themselves. And they carry it to know that if they're going to be a warrior, if they're going to be someone who might kill, they must always remember that the first person whose life they are responsible for is their own. Um, so, sorry.
So,
So, yeah, there's a lot of things to say.
so what I got from that is a lot of human exploration within emotions and what we are capable of as human beings, like ultimately can harm ourselves. Am I right in translating that?
Yeah, yeah, in a way. In some regards, yes. Yeah, yeah. It's
You know.
it's also about how the perfect, beautiful, good intentions of the individual are usually not necessarily good for the world. That they don't reflect positively in the world. Like, for example, when God created humanity, you would assume that it was a good thing, but there's so much suffering in the world. So the question of the theodicy in the book is also quite relevant, which is, well, the theodicy of how to explain the evil of the world if there's supposed to be a grand creator that is benevolent. Um, and why is there an endless cycle of suffering that is permeated onto us all, regardless of the fact that we're always trying to be happy? That's our greatest endeavor, and yet everybody suffers. Um, so it's a deeply introspective book. It tries to get into the issues of the human heart more than anything else, more than the big battles. Of course, there are big battles, there are machines and fantasy, and it's supposed to be fun, but it's also about exploring our deepest sense of self and whether we're content with this sense of self. So there's a lot of religiosity versus secularism, and a lot of philosophy versus belief, and a lot of science versus spirituality, and there's a lot of like contrasting ideas that characters have to face throughout the book.
So, what inspired you to, first of all, write this book, and second of all, what inspired you within? You've talked a bit about the human aspect of it, but I know you're a historian as well. So what inspired you within like some stuff that you've seen through your academic background that inspired you to write this?
Well, history is at the heart of the book. The main theme, one of the main things that happens in the book is that the protagonist belongs to an order of knights that essentially are like historian knights. They have access, mimetic access to the entire legacy of history of their species through trillions of years. This is like the last galaxy, not even the last galaxy. It's actually a synthetic galaxy because it's man-made. In order to preserve and to fight against the great heat death of the universe. So they bear all this human history in their minds, so they can actually, like a quirk that is fun is that they can fight someone and almost always win or be close to winning because they have been in that fight trillions of times. They have the experience of humanity themselves. So history is key. But what really inspired me to write the book, essentially the fact that I feel that when you write a book or when you do something in your life or when you have a life, it ought to be important. You have to have an important life. You have to write an important book. You have to write an important story because you're a human being. You are the universe knowing itself through you. Like you're right now, we are the best exponents of animal consciousness being able to understand the world around us. And so we are responsible of having an important life and having an important set of creations. So writing the book was a way to honor that deal we got from the universe, which is you are sentient and you're intelligent, and the universe is there to be known, and it might not be there forever. So what are you going to do? And I just thought, well, first of all, I love reading, and I love stories, and I thought this was an important book to write about all these themes and all these things that humanity might eventually face. I don't know.
That's fascinating to know. So you began writing around 15 years ago. So what has changed within your approach to tackling storytelling from the time you began to right now?
That's a great question. So 15 years ago, I was writing more poetry and setting. It was more about telling stories rather than writing them down because we were role playing rather than writing the story down. But I always had this idea formulating in my head that was always growing based on what eventually became the ethos of dreams. So what changed was essentially the fact that I never had the bravery of writing a book. I could write a setting for a tabletop role playing game because the telling of the story would happen post facto, would happen after the setting has been laid out, the pieces are on the table, people are going to tell the story. It's not my responsibility. So I wasn't brave enough to really write the story. So the what essentially changed is I really wanted to become a writer, and I met my soon to be wife, and I wanted to write a book for her. And so this book is dedicated to her. Like if you see the first thing it says there, and we're going to be married very soon, so
Actually,
it should say in the future to my wife. But right now it just says to Juani, which is her name. But anyway, that was the main like reason
oh,
my father had also sorry
that's
my
amazing. I can see that.
so my father had also recently died, and one of the things he told me is do something. He was very strict during my upbringing, so he was don't waste your life like I did was like one of his messages. And the
That's
last thing he said was he said I leave you my memories, which is a huge message in the book, which is the fact that we all leave only our memories to each other. And that's why history is at the heart of the story, because we leave only our memories to one another. So
it's very profound.
yeah, he was a very profound man. He was a very, very special man, for sure.
That's amazing. So my next question is, you've built such an intricate world filled with warring nations, magic, and like magical beasts, technology, and history. So how did you go about it, crafting this phenomenal world? Like, what tools did you use? Full form?
I just write. Um, I don't have like an appendix anywhere. It's all right in the head. I have to reread the book all the time to remember what happens so that I can continue what's going to happen in the next chapter. So, but I don't have like a special method to share. Like I don't have a huge map of events, or I don't have like a huge file with names and things. I read a lot. I read a lot of books from a bunch of authors. I read a lot of history mostly, and I take from the world what I put in the book. I played a lot of very good video games. I'm certainly deeply inspired by some stories that I find more fascinating than others, by some music that brings some emotions into you as you're writing. Um, but yeah, no, I had a friend ask me this about a year ago, like, how do I come up with the words and whatever? And I just said, I don't know, I just do it. I'm just writing, and then it's there, and then I refer to what's written rather than to an encyclopedia of knowledge. And after the fact, I make the drawings of the maps, and and I actually kind of force myself. That is something maybe if a method that's there. I just made the maps after the book was done, and then I changed the story as to how the map was a little bit laid out. Like for example, if I said they went east, but then the map there is no east because there's just a great sea. Now they're going south. I would change. They're now going south. Essentially because when I'm drawing the maps, I'm not really thinking this is what I want. I'm just like I'm going like this with the pen, and then there's a map. Um, so you might just say I'm improvising, and it's. I don't want to sound like I can take all this in my head. What really happens is that honestly, I'm not clever enough and organized enough to have a huge compendium of data or a huge super clever process that people can be like, oh yeah, you know the DC process of creating. No, I'm not clever that way.
Regarding your magic system, how
Mm.
do you ground it into realism in the aspect of a reader reads it and it's not far-fetched, so it has boundaries within it? How do you go about that?
Well, that's a very good question. So the magic system is technically not quite a magic system in the strict sense of the word. It's more a profound mimetic understanding of history that would allow you, if you are clever enough, and the main protagonists are supposed to be very clever, to see the world as it was in order to understand how the world is, so that you can predict how it will be.
Mhm.
So the basic magic system is based on time, on the understanding of time through the understanding of the cause consequence or the cause effect logic of the universe, in a way. But it's also based on the fact that humanity always leaves something behind. Like our existence leaves, just like I don't know if you've ever, if you of course you have a house, you realize that there's dust all the time, and you keep sweeping the floor and you keep dusting the tables, and it's all over the place. And part of it has to be you, right? And part of it has to be our skin and our hair just disintegrating. So the idea is that we are always shedding ourselves into the world, and that the very magic of the universe is in the shedding of human particles onto the world, in what we would call this remnants of who we were, that you can then access to know the history of something, or that you can then access to harness a given power. For example, create fire through would happen through the ordering of the particles around you that were once the greater human species, ordering them to just rub against each other until friction creates heat, and heat creates flame, and that's essentially how it works. But it's mostly like that would be like the special effects of the magic, like oh, the character can create, you know, a token or something. But mostly the magic is more like, when I meet someone, by knowing the history of the world, can I know her archetype, for example, immediately, so that I know how to talk to her to convince her about, I don't know, just open the door, and I know exactly how to say that, and in which way, so that they will do it, because I've been there trillions of time throughout history, asking the question, "Will you please open the door?" And it hasn't been opened until you say it this way, and I know that historically. And so that's essentially how the magic in the magic, I would say, actually works.
That's great to know. So you've managed to tie technology and sci-fi with religion. So in order to reinforce your story, so what made you go this route?
Um, Well, I'm a, I've always been very interested in religion since I was very little. I was deeply religious, and my family was Catholic, as most Colombians are. But when I was very young, I got into reading the Bible deeply and very quickly became an atheist. I immediately started to realize that there were issues with the specificity of belief. I have very few things to say about theology in terms of theism, but I have a lot to say when someone tells me that they know the name of God and they know the rules of God and they know the specifics of God. That's where I have a personal kind of like questioning immediately pop into my head. Like, how do you know, and why were you blessed with this knowledge that I'm not, despite being in the same culture, reading the same book? But then also I was living in a family house that was very scientific. My father, my brother, everybody was very scientific in their way of thinking. My mother as well. But there was also a deep sense of spirituality in my house. Like both my mom and my sister, essentially uh, pre- priestesses, I guess, of the Swami inclination in India. They lived in India for a while and they practiced the traditions of that region of the world and the philosophies. So there was a good mix of a hybrid of belief systems and thought systems in my house. And I never wanted to have a position of arrogance in which I thought I knew best what the result of life conditions would be, or how people know what they feel they know. So one of the things about this book is the, let's say, symbiosis, and not only symbiosis but working together or collaboration between all the endeavors of mankind, or the all the accomplishments of mankind, which are science, of course, is the physical accomplishment of, we're talking through this. I'm presuming you're in Britain
Yeah.
somewhere. um, Through the magic of technology. And I say magic essentially because I don't understand what process specifically is going on. Um, but there's also, we are communicating on a deeper level, you and I, despite just having met each other, because there is a sense of spiritual connection between human beings. If you were some form of individual that I wouldn't consider a human, would I be able to talk to you this way? How would I behave if I thought of you as a machine, for example, or as a result of pixels arranging themselves in my computer? There is a spiritual connection in the knowledge that you are a human being just like me. Um, and there's a lot of other forms of spiritual connections that are happening right now, like just the basic sense of our language. The language that we're using is a mimetic historical legacy of our past that was given to us, but that allows us to do the magic of understanding each other. Like my brain is literally understanding yours thanks to communication. So in the book, all those things are valued equally and they're pressed together into this, let's call it a diamond of belief systems that allow us to perpetuate life if we're wise, if we're wise, because you can use it wrongly and then it will destroy life. But for the most part, it allows us to progress through history hand in hand, rather than you go your way and I'll go mine.
Hmm. Fantastic. So crafting a compelling protagonist is difficult. So what advice would you give to other writers, and what have you found works for you and your protagonist?
um, that's another great question. I think it's a matter of, I feel that writing is a process that must hurt a little bit because it's a process of revelation. Like you reveal things onto the page about yourself and those you know that are not often nice, not often good, even when they're beautiful. Like, oh, this person can really love deeply. What is he or she going to do with the love, with this deep love right now? And the reality of it is sometimes something that might hurt us. So I would say that when you're trying to write a character that feels right, I think it has to be a character that you will learn to appreciate in the reflection that he or she is of you, and of those you love. There's a very interesting thing that there's a Japanese producer of a TV series, and a little girl once asked him, like, "Do you see yourself in the TV series?" And he says, "Only the parts I don't like." which is like this guy poured himself there into that mirror that he now calls his series. And you know it because when we look at a mirror, we certainly like some things for a little while, but if you look too intensely, you start to hate it. You hate that face looking back because it's so filled with things that you would change every little detail. For example, one of the things that is it's in the book and it's been in my life throughout forever is that my face, I have a I can't open my left eye very well. It's partly closed. In fact, for my youth, I couldn't see from the left eye, so I've always been ashamed of that.
Hmm.
When people look straight at my face, I try to look away or try to show my right side because it's the part of me that I like the most. When you're writing a character, I think the character has to be able to be something that creates this in the reader and the writer. Just like I like looking at this character right here, but I also feel like I don't want to look too hard because there's some depth of humanity in this character that is just it's jumping out of the page. It's almost violently attacking me because when he talks about I want to kill myself, I'm very close to killing myself. That might touch a chord. You might be like, well, maybe I do too. Maybe this is a situation that I couldn't live through because I wouldn't be able to lose that person or be able to be that failure for those I love. And I feel that's when the characters really come alive, and that's when they stick with you. That's when you more or less shed the invisible tear of the reader, uh, knowing, or at least having the feeling that this is a book that only I could understand, which is something that happens to me when I read some books. I feel like, oh, I get this book so much that it's almost like it belongs to me now. Like it's now mine. Even nobody can understand this book as I do because I just touched something in this character, and the character touched something back in me, and now it's fascinating. Which is why I always keep reading to see where else where else can you feel that hurt and that elation at knowing that even the things that are in paper have a life. They're somehow alive now in you. So I guess if you want to really write a super character, um, be honest about who you are.
That's great advice. Because as writers, we do put a bit of vulnerability out there into the work that we write, and you've touched upon that, and it's actually quite fascinating because a lot of your reviews, not that I've been stalking you or anything like that, um, they do say that they do really connect with your characters. They do see a a, a, a connection within that, and they travel within them throughout the story. Because they see them grow and like overcome things, so it's quite fascinating that.
Hmm. Thank you. Yes, I hope it's true. Um, Sometimes when I'm reading reviews, if they're good, I can't believe them, and if they're bad, I believe absolutely everything they say.
It's a common thing for writers, isn't it? Um, so how do you balance writing and fleshing out such a large cast of characters with, your day job?
Um, well, that might be the toughest thing to do. When I started the book, I really wanted to just tell the story of the main two characters or three characters. But then I realized the story, any story, is not really about a character. A story is always about um, how the characters relate to other characters. And so the bigger, it's not like the bigger the cast, the better. But the bigger the cast, the more dimensions of the main characters you're going to be able to show, because that's how life is. We don't meet the people that are important for our lives. We meet the people that are there in our lives, whether they are close or not, and they all influence us indirectly somehow. So by having a larger cast of characters, what I would be able to do was to show the greater, deeper spirit of both the world, but of each character in their interactions with one another. And how I balance that with the work is essentially I'm a teacher, which means that I have vacation every once in a while, which is a good thing. But mostly, I just try to never stop writing while I'm at work at every moment that I get a chance to. As a teacher, you sometimes get like this is a free period to grade and stuff. I make sure that I do grading as fast and yet as fast as I can. I like teaching my kids how to write because I'm a writer, so what am I going to do? So we do a lot of essays, and I'm very specific about the rubric that I use to grade them. And I do take my time, but as soon as I'm done, I'm writing, which is it's one of the reasons why I don't write like 100 books a year. I wrote this book in 2 years and then fixed it in another 2 years, like improved all the little details. I couldn't ever afford a people who check editors. I could
There's
never afford yeah, a stylist or an editor or anything like that. So I just had to make sure that the book was well written by going through it a million times, which was good because I have a terrible memory. And so, if I wanted to continue writing, I had to reread the thing. My soon-to-be wife certainly has been a great help. She would be my editor. She's the one that reads it and checks it and tells me if there's a problem. But also she allows me to have the time to do it by helping me with a lot of stuff. And that's how I manage, I guess. I'm 200,000 words into the second book. It should be done by the end of next year, I'm thinking.
mhm,
And that would probably be mostly thanks to her.
that's amazing. So, who's your favorite character? I know it's like asking who's your favorite child, but who's your favorite character that you've written so far?
Um, the main the main three characters, Sarah the 34th, well, the incarnation of God, Kaelestis, or Belshazzar the Seal Knight, and Shai the Wanderer are essentially one single character broken into three phases. Like they are like the trinity of what I really think are the true parts of my conscience, so to speak, of my idea of who people are and how people should be and how people fail. And I think those three are by far my favorite characters. If I had to choose one of them, I would say Kaelestis because of his. Shai has already lost so much that he's the immovable stone. The guy that is willing to do anything because he has lost everything. But Kaelestis is not there yet. He's quite the opposite. He's the unmovable force, the unstoppable force. He is the man who is willing to do everything because he has nothing, and he can achieve everything just by being alive. And I think that makes him a fascinating character, even though he's depressive and he's frustrating. And I know when people read him, they feel like, oh, this guy is so annoying with his existentialism and with his self-loathing and with his sense of either life is, you know, this perfect gift or it's a bane on the conscience. But I think that's what makes it more real. It's like a character that is just like us when we're in the silence of a private moment in which we get to really criticize ourselves without humbleness. And we're just like, man, I'm just the worst. Um, and when you really get to that point in which you really analyze yourself deeply, that's when you get to the state of in which Calestis is living, because he is in great pain because of what he did, trying to save his little sister. He kills his mother during childbirth, and he knows what he did. He's fully aware that he has a debt with the world. He created, he destroyed his maker, so he has a huge debt with the world that he needs to somehow repay. And I feel every human being lives with a sense of debt, that we owe the world and we owe life something, something great. And by the way, that's where we find the importance in our lives, in knowing what that is and then doing something about it. But also, I think that's where we find the greatest pain of our lives, because not always can we achieve it. Not always can we pay the debt. And we go to our graves in our final moments, possibly, I'm not sure, I haven't died yet, but possibly thinking, I just needed a little, one more year, one more attempt, one more try to right the wrongs I brought into the world, the debt that I never paid. So that I think that's what makes him the most fascinating character, even though he's annoying for some people at times. Yeah.
Oh, that's great to know. So, where can people find your book and, get to connect with you a bit more?
So they can connect with me. I love talking to people who read the book or want to read the book. MyAtlasOfDreams.com. They'll go to my website and they can just contact me directly. And there's a mailing list group sign up thingy that you can also do. And then when I write anything, you'll get it, which I think is a pretty good thing because, you know, I sometimes write other stuff. Yes, my email is thedreamatlas@gmail.com. Um, they can also Instagram. I don't know how that works. I think it's at Dream Atlas. I think that's how it works. I have a Facebook which I've never really used because I was not I'm a part of the Facebook generation, but I never really could get on the Facebook thing. I don't There's so many buttons. I don't know how to click, what to click. People that I don't know are writing stuff. I don't know. I know I don't know Facebook well. I do know Gmail, so they can write a Gmail. And the book can be acquired either my website. You go to the website and immediately uh, the Atlas of Dreams um, .com, and you go to wherever you can click. I think almost anywhere, and you just click there, and it takes you to Amazon. I know it's an expense that maybe I'm not worthy of, but if you buy the physical book, it's so much better than the Kindle because the Kindle doesn't have the images and it doesn't have a lot of the interesting little details that I made present for the editing. You know, it really has the heart of it, the physical copy. But of course, it's more expensive. It's like 25 bucks, which is the cheapest I could make it. If I could offer it for free, I would. And the same for the Kindle. It's 99 cents, which is again the cheapest I could make it. I really just want people to read it. I'm not in the journey of money. That's not my thing here. It would be great. So if I could dedicate my life to writing, I would be so happy. I would be so happy. But that didn't happen already with the book, and I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. Or might. I mean, who knows? Maybe this interview is is the leaping stone. Suddenly feels like it, but even if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. I just would really like for people to have the book. So the atlasofdreams.com.
You have that journey. And speaking about your Kindle version and your hardcover version, a lot of your reviewers have said that they did go for the Kindle version first, but then they were so captivated that they had to move over and buy the actual physical version, and they were so like taken aback by the art and how amazing that it was, and it fed through everything. So I do really advocate for getting the hardback version first, because
Thank
from
you.
your reviews and what people are saying, it's just amazing. And I've seen the art; it's really fantastic. Like, you've got a real talent for just drawing. I'm kind of jealous about your art style. I
No. Thank you so much.
yeah. So that was our interview with Daniel Cuervonegro. Have I said it right?
Yes, that's yeah.
Daniel Cuervonegro. It was really fascinating to sit down with you and talk about your writing process, get to know a bit about you, where our viewers can find you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I would just want to thank you and everybody who's behind your wonderful endeavor, and I'm absolutely honored. I'm not sure I'm worthy of such a gift, but I am honored profoundly. I was very moved when I got the email. I almost didn't believe it. I was like, "Well, why would anybody want to talk to me of all people?" So I am profoundly humbled by this interview and by you, and you've been absolutely amazing. Um, and whoever sees this, I hope it's not a waste of time. Wasting time is one of the worst things you could do. But I sometimes feel that when I talk too much, and I wouldn't want to make them feel like I'm just wasting their time. I hope they find something worthy in my silly little words.
Not at
And
all.
again, I'm
It's
very thankful.
we're thankful that you're here as well. So thank you very much. And everybody knows where to find your books. We will link them in the bio below so that people can go directly to your website. And you're also Goodreads verified, so they can find you there as well. So
yes.
we'll make sure that we link everybody where they need to go. And we really thank you for sitting down with us. And we hope to see you again on this platform, maybe talking about your next book. So
Of
thank
course.
you very much.
Of course. Thank you, Husna. It was an absolute honor, and I'm very, very thankful.
Thank you
Have
very
a
much.
wonderful day.